Yo, welcome into the show, BroMob. We're your hosts, Chad and Brian. Today is Tuesday, September 17th, and man, as always, we have got a great show for you. We've got our fantasy week 2 recap. We're going through our genius picks, our dumb picks, waiver review, hold'em picks, and so much more for you, BroMob. Welcome, man. Brian, how you doing, man? Looks like you're about to lose hard to me, so I'm doing good. Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I'm only up 3 points right now in the listener league, but I need the Browns to score here because then that almost renders Lev Bell out of the game. So Baker just dropped back; he's running for his life, and he threw it to a fan in the crowd. So there you go. Yeah, man. Hey, real quick, I just want to talk about this breaking news that happened as we were entering the show. So Steelers have traded a 2020 first-round pick to the Dolphins for defensive back Minkah Fitzpatrick.
You said Manika? His name is Minka.
I call him Manika because it sounds like Shanika. Shaniqua.
Get out of here.
Shmika.
Minka Fitzpatrick.
Why did I add an A between Mani? Why did I add an E between E and K? It's clear. Manika.
You stubbed my knee.
Yeah. Stubbed my knee.
my knee is hurting, coach. Take me out.
Oh, man. We got so much to talk about today, dude.
Yeah. Starting with just everybody wanting out of Miami right now. And everybody just asking for trades, apparently. Jalen Ramsey looking for trades. Crazy stuff going on there. And just so many injuries. I mean, Jesus. Last week was crazy. This week's even more crazy.
Right. And, look, they've been outscored like 100+ points to 10 for the year.
Oh, the Dolphins.
The Dolphins.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think it's just people wanting out of Miami. I think it's just people wanting the team out of Miami. Like the CFL.
I think it's just people wanting to stay healthy. Like, how do I get through this season alive?
They're very bad.
It's not good.
Yeah, they're very, very bad. So basically, you almost want to start every defense that you can against the Dolphins.
Yeah. Starting with Dallas next week. It's going to be it's just free fantasy points for everybody who plays them.
Guess what my defensive start of the week will be? Anyone playing
Spoiler
the
alert.
Miami Dolphins every week
the Dolphins
forever.
defense is going to be out there. No, it's not going to be the Dolphins defense.
Man.
Yeah, it was a crazy week, BroMob. We're talking franchise players going down for long, extended periods of time. And then outside of that, some other players who are explosive and showing some really big potential for you in this fantasy season. People that you thought were going to be good, but they're turning out to be more than good for you. Fantasy season is in full force. It's crazy. It's got the highs, it's got the lows, and it's fun to watch. Week 1 was insane, just with all the crazy amounts of points that were going out. Week 2, it settled down a bit, right? I mean, teams brought down the earth outside of anybody who started New England Patriots defense, at least. Brian, you lucky SOB over here.
Yes.
But outside of that, everybody was it looked like a lot of teams were very close matchups and things like that. So let's get into our fantasy recap of the week. But first, BroMob, be sure to follow along after the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram at FFBrosPodcast. And be sure to search that hashtag BroMob for all sorts of shenanigans, good news, crazy stuff that's going on, and everything like that. So, Brian, let's start the show. Fantasy Weekly Recap.
Ooh, love this jam,
song gets
dude.
me going, man. I'm feeling it. I get the vibe going.
Yeah.
All right.
Groovy.
Speaking of feeling it, the Saints and Rams game wasn't feeling it that much. It didn't end up being the high-scoring game that Vegas and everybody thought it was going to be, us included. But it did turn out to be a interesting game from the standpoint that Drew Brees, ladies and gentlemen, tore ligament in his thumb, getting surgery, and it's sounding like it's a minimum of 6 weeks, depending on the surgeon that he has. It could be even longer. So I know he's going to find the best possible surgeon out there. Of course, it's Drew Brees, but it's not good news for the team, especially not good news for fantasy owners.
No, not at all. So if you're a Michael Thomas owner, this is not good news for you. If you're an Alvin Kamara owner, I think it's a decent. I think you're okay. I think Kamara's still going to be very involved. I actually would expect Kamara to be more involved. Chad, I don't know about you, but do you think it's time to take a little bit of a look at Latavius Murray? I would expect a little bit of an uptick on the amount of carries that they're running the ball.
Yeah, I agree. The team is definitely going to be using the run game a lot more than they were even going to before. So Lat Murray should get a big uptick in his game. Alvin Kamara, of course, going to get used a lot more. And you know what? Michael Thomas takes a hit here, but Teddy Bridgewater is an accurate quarterback, and usually accurate QBs go pretty well with wide receivers that catch every ball that's thrown their way. The highest completion percentage to wide receivers last year was with Michael Thomas, so it's pretty incredible. So Michael Thomas, he'll take a little tick off of him, but I still think he's a wide receiver one. He should still have a great season. Outside of that, the Rams, Brandon Cooks finally found pay dirt, got used sparingly in the offense, still didn't get the number one amount of targets in the target share, but it's good to see him getting used a little bit more. As the weeks go on, you'll see more big plays out of him, but start off the game, he had a 57-yard reception. That's the type of plays we like to see out of him. Usually takes him to the house, so that was nice to see. And everything there. So let's move on. We've got the Cowboys and Redskins game. The Cowboys offense continued the roll with their new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, at the helm. And man, Dak just seems to be on a roll right now. He's going crazy. He got 7 touchdowns in the first 2 games. He lost Michael Gallup in this game, but didn't even blink. He still had Devin Smith that he hit long for a long touchdown. Amari Cooper was used pretty heavily, and he was all over. Dak just looked good. The Redskins, not so good, but what did look good out of that team, Terry McLaurin, once again, high usage rate and looked, solid out of the entire team. He had the number 1 targets on the team. He 8 targets, 7 catches, and a big game from him. So, Brian, what else we got?
Yeah, so Lions Chargers, I think was a pretty interesting game. Defensive matchup. So it was, the Chargers looked like a completely different team than last week. Eckler continued his dominance, which I expected this week against the Lions defense. Rivers looked a little off, and I think it might have to do with just the Lions defensive scheme, and they get after the quarterback a little bit, so he looked a little flustered there through the game. Lions defense held their ground, like I said, though. Carry-on actually used more in this game and was more efficient. So that was good to see, and he's going to be a guy you don't want to get out of the lineup too often this year. I think he's going to be a stud. So that was the Lions-Chargers game. The other game, Vikings-Packers, that was a fun game to watch. Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones put on a show. It was fun. Cook definitely proving he's an RB1 this year, and paying off for what you had to invest in him to draft him this year, which is great. Looks explosive, powerful, smart. And Kirk Cousins on the other side of it, just not really looking sharp yet. And it really makes me think the team they want to really be more of a ground and pound style team. So I don't know if Cousins just needs to get more consistent, like throws and stuff. Maybe and look, I think the Packers defense is legit too. So I don't want to discount that. But Aaron Jones, that's my guy, man. And so he looked great. I know I listed him as a bust this week, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But again, I want to remind the BroMob, when Chad and I list a player as a bust, we're not saying that you should sit them and that they are a bust. We are just saying that the matchup is ripe, that the player might not produce what you'd expect, so therefore rendering them possibly a bust. But I didn't really have any other solid matchups, so I rolled them out. And as a matter of fact, there were several people that reached out to us this week, Chad, asking for start sit advice, and I recommended Aaron Jones to go on every one of those. So hopefully, BroMob, if you're listening and you are one of those people that we recommended you roll Aaron Jones out there, hopefully you did, and you're benefiting from it.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, like you were saying before, though, with Kirk Cousins, thing to be afraid of right here is the fact that he is top 5 in the NFL right now in uncatchable pass rate. And so that's just a percentage of attempts that he's throwing that cannot be caught. So Cam Newton leads the league in that, and Kirk Cousins is like number 3 right behind him. So it's kind of scary for that team. So let's move on.
Good.
We got the Cardinals at Ravens, and man, this was a closer game than I expected. Cardinals put up a fight. Kyler Murray looked good. I mean, he didn't have a touchdown, but here's the thing: he put up about 350 yards against a solid defense after traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast to play a 1 p.m. Eastern time game. So I mean, he traveled pretty long, didn't have much time to practice, and looked pretty well. Outside of that, Lamar Jackson looked very good, looking like an MVP, to be honest. So last week, we saw what he could do through the air. This week, we saw what he could do on the ground. He was good through the air as well. He hit Mark Andrews, which was one of our awesome plays this week, but Mark Andrews looked good. He was going to him regularly, and he went regularly to Marquise Hollywood Brown as well. This offense is dynamic, it's explosive, and it's looking really good. Brian's going crazy, and I'm seeing a Baker
OBJ just took one for 89 yards for a touchdown. Oh my God.
Welcome to the Browns, OBJ. Oh,
sorry,
man.
I was just losing my mind. I got the game up on the screen here in the studio, and that was amazing.
Ooh.
Right up the seam. Well, that was beautiful.
Back into the Ravens game here. The whole Ravens offense looked great. The problem here is that Mark Ingram went down with a little bit of an injury, came back, played a little bit, and was just hurting from there on out. So let's move into the next game.
OBJ takes one to
or
the house.
lack thereof, wasn't really a game. The Patriots-Dolphins game, I mean, we talked about it already. Tom Brady looked great. Antonio Brown, the big name here, was used often and regularly right up in the beginning of the game. I mean, 4 receptions, had a touchdown. Tom Brady looked his way often right there in that first drive even. So a lot to expect here going forward. What we saw happen because of this, Josh Gordon wasn't used very much. We saw just a lot of AB and a lot of running game. It could be game script. So basically, based off the fact that they were just absolutely slobbering the Dolphins, and not much to talk about the Dolphins side, right? I mean, this team is terrible.
Yeah, they're a dumpster fire. That's all I'm going to say about that. I feel bad for the players that have to come every week. Eagles Falcons, Chad. Carson wins. Carson, yeah, he winces for sure. Carson Wentz.
He did wince.
Yeah, looked rough. Got hurt. It looks like maybe a bruised rib or something like that. I mean, he took a pretty hard shot to the ribs. And Alshon Jeffrey got hurt. Djax was hurt. So, not good for them. Aguilar stepped in, had a great game though, and so Nelson Aguilar was a great play. If you happen to somehow be really short and you played him this week, good for you. It's unlikely though. He's probably sitting on a lot of people's benches or on the waiver wire.
I will say though, that Aguilar missed a wide open pass for a huge touchdown to win the game for the Eagles at the end there. It was right in his hands. You could see he put his hands in his helmet. He's like, no, like that was game winner right there, and he missed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Calvin Ridley had a great game, another good game actually. So he looks great. Obviously, getting a lot of single coverages, and he has definitely taken the next step as a wide receiver. This is his second year, and you can really see it in his play. Could be the replacement for Julio one day. I think. Almost maybe it reminds me of like the Bolden Fitz era, for Arizona, and so
or even there with Atlanta when Julio came in and they still had Roddy White on the team.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a transition from Roddy White to Julio. I don't think it's gonna be as quick as it was before because I mean, let's be honest, Julio was a beast in this game too. Huge touchdown at the end of the game to bring them back into it, and he had a end zone, red zone touchdown, which was phenomenal. It's good to see Julio actually getting used in the end zone. But yeah, I could definitely see Ridley being that nice transition piece for the team eventually.
Yeah, and I think they're both serviceable this year. So definitely, if you've got them, I think they both need to be playing. Raiders Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. Jeez. I mean, this guy just looks ridiculous to start the year. I saw a post on Twitter. Somebody said, would you be willing, knowing what you know now with who you took it in the first round, how many people would be willing to take Pat Mahomes instead of that pick now? And it was there was like a poll. It was like 40% of people said that they would be willing to. So
it's funny because there's a guy in our league who went Pat Mahomes in the first round, and we were making fun of it because he could have snagged somebody in the second round, which, by the way, he still could have. But, I mean, 35 plus points week 1 and week 2 is pretty impressive for a quarterback.
Yeah, you know what's impressive is the guy that took Mahomes in the first round in our league of record put up 124 this week, and he's going to be 2-0. So, so far so good. Where the disadvantage of doing that is halfway through the season when you've got a few injuries and you're struggling because you did that. That's when it really hits you. So anyway, obviously, he's balling out. Raiders, yeah. Tyrell Williams, not too bad. Didn't play had some mistakes. You can definitely see there was some mistakes there, but turned out to be a decent fantasy option, though. He still put some points on the board, which wasn't too bad. He had a touchdown in the game. But yeah, other than that, I mean, Josh Jacobs was kind of quiet, had 90 yards rushing, but didn't get the touchdown. So it was a quiet night for Raiders.
I like Darren Waller too. I mean, the usage rate there with him is incredible. Whenever you're looking at tight ends, what you want is someone who's getting used in the offense. Which we'll talk about a guy here in a little bit that didn't get used at all, but at least Darren Waller's getting used, and he looks like a good wideout, a wideout tight end type of person, right? I mean, he's getting used quite often in the passing game, so I like it. What I don't like, Bears offense. It's just another ugly game for them, and Matt Nagy's team there is struggling. Mitch Trubisky is struggling big time. And even the ground attack doesn't look that good. I mean, David Montgomery was used quite a bit in this game. Not many yards. He got the touchdown, so it saved fantasy owners there. But the thing to be kind of noteworthy from the Bears is the fact that they finally have a kicker, man. And that's when you're talking about the most exciting thing on your team is the fact that you have a kicker who can make a field goal. You're struggling elsewhere. So it's cool to see him winning games, but especially winning games at the end of the game with a kicker making the field goal. But it's ugly.
Yeah, I part of it too, though. I got to give it to, I mean, look, it's early in the season. You're going to Denver. That's a tough place to play early in the season when you're still not, you're only 2
high
games
altitude.
in. Yeah, the altitude, that's real. I mean, the statistics show it. It's a tough place to go in and play a ball game early in the season. So the Bears came out with a win, and I think for them, it's all that matters.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing that does matter in terms of fantasy right here is the Broncos offense is just the epitome of meh, right? I mean, it's just it's a very bland offense. It's cookie cutter. It doesn't look good, right? Joe Flacco at the helm isn't doing anybody any favors. It was nice to see Emmanuel Sanders get a touchdown, but outside of that, man, Philip Lindsay looked like trash. Royce Freeman looked bad. Of course, it's the Bears defense. They're the best in the league, so you can expect that, but it's not looking good for them.
Hey, I got to make a quick comment. How's that Manny Sanders, Dante Pettis trade look now in the Underground League? Just saying.
Looking pretty nice.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move on here. We got the Bengals 49ers. John Ross, man, did it again with a 60-plus yard touchdown. Which, to be honest, he wasn't having a very good game before that. So, fantasy owners that put him in there, banking on his home run threat, they won this week. I mean, it was a huge game for him because of that play. Outside of him, not too much to talk about. Joe Mixon was stopped in this game. Tyler Boyd was used quite regularly, at least. He got a whole bunch of yardage and a whole bunch of stuff going on there. But outside of that, just not a very good performance out of Mixon or that rushing attack. Mixon be missing his offensive line, Brian.
Mixon be missing.
49ers move to 2-0, which is unexpected, right? I mean, it's looking really good. Jimmy G looked more comfortable, more improved. The rushing attack was incredible without Tevin Coleman there. So Raheem Mostert must start? Question mark? I hit you with the back-to-backs. The back-to-back terrible puns.
2 terrible back-to-back puns. Wow, that was awful. Seahawks. Oh, by the way, you just beat me in the Underground League. Oh man,
got that win.
Big Ben really hurt me this week. That was the dagger in the heart. Steelers Seahawks. As we segue into that, the Big Ben injury to the elbow, obviously out for the season. Came out today. He's going to require elbow surgery. Mm-hmm. Chad, Juju didn't really have much of a game. Terminator himself, James Conner, not much of a game. Here's the question I think BroMob is wondering is, what do you do with some of these Steelers offensive players?
You're holding Juju because he's going to get target share in the offense. James Conner went down with an injury to the knee. It sounds like he's okay, and there's a lot of optimism that he's doing fine, but it's just one of those things that you're worried about because he's got an injury history to him. So fantasy owners out there that have Juju, fantasy owners that have James Conner, they got to be looking, especially if they don't have him, they got to be looking to trade for Jalen Samuel. This guy is going to be heavily used if James Conner isn't in offense. He's already getting used. He had a 37% target or snap share on this offense already in this week, so he's getting used regularly, and James Conner is a little scary to see.
Yeah, we'll get into Jalen Samuels here in just a little bit. Seahawks off to a 2-0 start for the season. DK Metcalf looks like he's getting more and more comfortable with Russell Wilson.
Looks good.
That looks like it's going to be a great connection. He looks great. Hey, Lockett, Pop and Lockett, much more involved this week. Loved it. Loved that Pop and Lock. And so keep that up. I hope that continues. Here's the question. So Chris Carson fumbles twice, and then they throw Rashad Penny in. If you look at the stat line, it's going to hide how he really ran. His stat line is going to read over 6 yards per carry. He had 10 carries for 60-some yards. I think it was 62 yards, if I'm not mistaken, and a touchdown. Fantasy output, English, not bad. However, if you back out that 37-yard touchdown run, he averaged 2.7 yards per carry. Versus when you look at Chris Carson's yards and you look at his numbers, he had 15 carries. He averaged 4 yards per carry. So my question is what are the Seahawks doing?
Seahawks are going to keep Chris Carson in. I'm sorry, but this was just, hey, you got to keep the ball in your hands. We got to win this game. It's too close, and we can't trust you right now. Next week, Chris Carson's coming back out there. He's getting used a lot. I mean, he's the better running back. He really is.
Yep.
There's a reason that he won that job this offseason over Rashad Penny. So Chris Carson, I mean, it was a really tough rushing defense against Pittsburgh there. They went to Pittsburgh. They're in their home turf. It's just a hard game. It wasn't a good matchup from the begin with. So fantasy owners that have Chris Carson, don't worry about it. He's going to be fine. Just make sure that if he starts to fumble again, then maybe you should start panicking, but keep him in your lineups.
Yeah, Titans, Colts, Chad, next game here on the list. Brissett wasn't that bad, but also really didn't produce much. I mean, visually looked okay, but just not a great fantasy output. T.Y. Hilton continuing to be a great wide receiver 2 for fantasy this year, and I think he will continue that throughout the season. Tennessee's defense is good, so they're good. Yeah. However, on the offensive side, I think it's going to be a roller coaster of a year. Derrick Henry this week really didn't look all that great. It was saved by a 1-yard touchdown, so his fantasy output wasn't terrible. Mariota, the passing attack look a little bit better this week. And so what are your thoughts with this Tennessee offense, Chad?
It's all going to live and die with Mariota, and that's kind of how it's always been. Mariota, very inconsistent, can be a star one week and a dud the next, and that's what this offense is going to be like. So any of those passing down, those receivers catching passes from Mariota, they're going to be very up and down from week to week. So expect that if you have some of the shares in that. All right, Texans at Jaguars. Detective Minshew on the case, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this outfit was hot. It was hot to trot.
Here's the question that everyone wants to know. Detective Minshew or Detective Minshew? The guy is
the answer is Detective Minshew. This guy,
he's golden.
Yeah, this guy's hilarious.
He was more exciting. The whole pregame piece. He was more excited. Did you see the pregame piece where they said that he stretches in the locker room, wearing nothing but a jockstrap? I was dying. So here's the deal. He was more exciting in his whole pregame shenanigan than the entire game itself.
Yeah, the entire game was a little bit of a dud. It was very defensive, but what we can pull from the Jacksonville Jaguars offense and Detective Minshew, Gardner Minshew, of course, is who we're talking about, could be a legitimate streaming option going on this year. And the reasoning is, I mean, his ground game. I mean, he looks good on the ground. He's going to get some rushing yards from week to week, and they're going to be passing it a lot, being behind the games or competitive on defense. The big thing here we're hearing is Jalen Ramsey's wanting out of town. So if he leaves, it's a big blow on that defense. Could be getting scored on quite often without him. So everything looked good there. He loves to throw it to DJ Charkh, apparently, because that's who he was connecting with, during his second team reps. So Charkh is probably his guy. He looks good. I mean, he's a big, fast receiver, and is a really good complement to D.D. Westbrook on the outside. And then finally here, just Leo Fournette. Man, this guy's a bum. I've been talking about it all offseason. He's not good. He's not a good running back. He averaged, I think, 3 yards again. It's almost every game he plays, he's averaging 3.5 yards. It's just terrible. He's inefficient. The only thing he's got is volume, and he didn't even have that in this game. So I don't like him, BroMob. Don't put him in the lineups. If you can trade him for whatever you can get right now, trade him for whatever you can get, because it's going to be a headache of a season.
Well, and it doesn't get any easier for him in the next few games. He's got Tennessee and Denver on the schedule for the next 2 weeks. Then he's got Carolina and then New Orleans. All 4 of those teams pretty tough against the run. And then Cincinnati. Then he's got the Jets. So I mean, his lineup is not looking very favorable, and he's got Detective Minshew back there just picking apart the defense with his mustache. So,
he's back there solving crimes.
Yeah, I mean, he ain't solving running schemes, that's for sure.
Solving crimes and stealing your girlfriend.
I mean, here's the thing. This is the sad part, is Detective Minshew had more rushing yards than Leonard Fournette did.
Exactly. That proves my point even more right there. So, BroMob, stay away from him. Texans offense didn't look very good here. I mean, it didn't look comfortable. DeAndre Hopkins had a bad game. He was guarded by Jalen Ramsey for most of it. Will Fuller, outside of a couple of grabs, didn't look very good. Kenny Stills, you know what? The thing I'm kind of worried about with Will Fuller is that Kenny Stills came to town. He's the same receiver. He's not as good, but he does the same things. And because of that, there's going to be times where Will Fuller gets taken off the field in situations where he wouldn't have last season or the year before. And Kenny Stills is going to steal some of those big 30-yard, 40-yard gains that he was getting before. So I'm a little worried about Will Fuller. We'll talk about him later, but keep an eye on that. Outside of that, the Texans offense, the rushing attack looked okay. The big story here is Watson just continues to run for his life. So Bills-Giants, we were absolutely right about this game. The Bills walked away with it. The Giants, they are who we thought they were. And the Bills offense looks better than advertised. I mean, Josh Allen has put up over 250 yards in back-to-back weeks. He didn't do that one time last season. So he's using the passing game more. He still uses the rushing game quite a bit, and he's one of the better fantasy streamers for the season. So anybody who picked him up and streamed him this week, good job. Brian, I know you did, so good for you. Devin Singletary found the end zone for the first time with only 6 carries, but the problem is it looks like he got a soft tissue injury with his hamstring and could be out from anywhere for 2 to 6 weeks. So concerning there. What's not concerning is the never-aging 973-year-old Frank Gore now gets the ball even more than he was getting before, and he got a touchdown. I mean, how does somebody who, I don't even know if he has bones in his body anymore, how does he get a touchdown?
No one knows, Chad.
Nobody knows for sure. He's complete robogenics inside of his body. He's got robogenics.
Robogenics.
I just made that word up, robogenics. It needs to be a word. The Giants' offense looked like a mess outside of Saquon Barkley, of course, and even Evan Ingram had a bad game here. So the offense looked so bad, and it was sputtering so badly that they're talking about bringing Daniel Jones in this coming week. So keep an eye on that, BroMob. Daniel Jones is one of those intriguing players. he looked really good this preseason. Could come in and be a streaming option going forward. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So next game here, as we wrap things up, Chad, is Panthers Bucks. And this was the game that stabbed me in the eye about 12 times this week. It was a game that caused me a lot of grief and emotional distraught. And guys, look, it was hard to watch. Something's not right with Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Either the shoulder is not. There's something wrong with the shoulder.
It's got to be.
Or there's something going on like with him mentally. It's like he's not seeing things correctly, and he's overthrowing people. I mean, he looks like Uncle Rico out there just flipping the ball around, like it's just
slinging it over the mountain.
It just doesn't look good. I mean, there's something wrong. I mean, if he spent as much time trying to figure out how to throw the ball accurately as he does on his fashion sense, maybe he would actually figure it out. I don't know if you saw what he's wearing this week, but holy smokes, what was that?
It looked as good as his actual throwing arm did. I mean, it was bad.
It looked really terrible. So, I mean, and it wasn't any better on the other side. So Jameis Winston looks like he's confused at times or constantly. I don't know. The team, so there's a release before the game. I literally retweeted it on our page, and it says that Ronald Jones II to be more involved. So I retweet, right? I retweet with a excellent, like, can't wait. I've got him on a couple squads. I've been waiting for this, for him to slowly get involved. Did he even play, bro? What happened?
He didn't look good. If you watch that game, Peyton Barber clearly looked like the better running back of that team, and that's not saying much because he didn't look good. No. Ronald Jones, I think he likes to run into the back of people. That's his thing. He sees a hole, but he doesn't care. He wants to just run into people because he's so small. He's got that small guy complex, right? We understand. We got to prove a point. I mean, he's like not proving a point
in the world. I mean, I feel like I could do almost anything in the world. So
I mean, I know I can.
Again, I don't know about that.
You want to go?
I've seen how you move, and if you got into a fight with somebody and you had to run for your life, you're probably dead.
Yeah, true. It hurts to stand up from time to time. So,
but that was a rough game to watch, and that was how we started the week, Chad.
Yep. Crazy week, crazy fantasy week for everybody, and a crazy game going on right now between the Browns and the Jets that we'll get to talk about tomorrow a little bit more. So, BroMob, let's move on to our next segment.
Genius, genius, genius!
All right, so last week we gave you, BroMob, some great picks. And if you were smart enough to listen, smart enough to go to our website, good for you guys, because we had some good stuff going on. Brian, I'm going to start with mine. One of my starts of the week, Tom Brady, went 20 for 28, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, and produced 24.7 fantasy points for owners. Here's the outcome right here. If you're playing against the Dolphins, you're playing that player. It's plain as day. It's fantasy points galore for the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiver, the defense, anybody you can think of. They're going to have a good week. Another good start from that came from me, Matt Beretta, who had 12 carries for 121 yards and 1 catch for 11 yards, 13.7 points. This is about what I predicted out of him. Points-wise, I was hoping for a touchdown, but point-wise, he didn't disappoint, BroMob. And then finally, my stream of the week here, Josh Allen went 19 for 30, 253 yards, a touchdown, 7 carries for 21 yards, and a rushing touchdown, putting up 22.2 points for you, BroMob. So good starts there. I also talked about some sits, one of them being Leonard Fournette. I'm just going to put him on the constant sit. I'm just going to go ahead and put the flag next to his name. Constantly sit this guy because he's garbage. He had 15 carries for 47 yards, 4 catches, 40 yards. He had 10.7 fantasy points for your BroMob. It's not what you're looking for from your running back 2. And some teams, if you went wide receiver heavy in the beginning, you're running back 1. So expect headaches moving forward. Get Advil. And then finally, the other sit of the week that I had, Sterling Shepard had 2 catches for 19 yards for 1.9 points. I mean, looking terrible. Eli Manning looking bad. It's a tough defense they were going against the Bills, so you couldn't expect anything worse.
You really don't like Leonard Fournette, man. Jeez.
I don't.
Yeah, it's bad. All right, so my genius picks, I didn't have many this week, Chad. So I'm just going to really be just quite honest, right? But I did have a few. So I recommended everybody start Austin Eckler this week, and that did not disappoint. 17 carries, 66 yards, and a tutty. Additional 6 catches through the air for 67 yards and 20.3 fantasy points on the week. He ended up being a great start for you if you kept him out there. And I honestly think he should be a weekly start. I don't think there's hardly any matchups where I would say sit him. So also recommended to sit David Johnson. So look, and that didn't disappoint. It almost was really, really bad. He had 7 carries, 14 yards, got lucky with that touchdown. And I won't say lucky, he got in, but he had 1 catch for 0 yards. So not a good game for David Johnson. He'll have better games ahead. So
you actually got some flack on Twitter for that one, Brian. And it was a bad defense to start him against. The Baltimore defense is for real.
It is for real. So also recommended start Tyrell Williams this week. And not a bad outing. I mean, it could have been better. He had some bad plays, but 5 catches on 7 targets for the week and 46 yards, a touchdown, 13.1 fantasy points. That's not a bad outing. Here's what's interesting about Tyrell Williams, Chad. So he had an 18% target share in that game. He's on pace year to date. Now, granted, I get it. This is through 2 games, but he's on pace for 176 catches on the season right now. So, which is impressive. And now I expect that to come down a bit, but I mean, look, they're going to be a team that's down a lot. So I think Carr's going to be throwing the ball. Tyrell Williams is going to be catching it. So recommended start the Patriots defense, which hopefully everyone that had the Patriots defense started them this week. 2 touchdowns, 44 fantasy points. Enough said. Also recommended sit the Rams defense, 9 fantasy points this week against the Saints. And probably could have been a lot worse. Not a bad week. Hopefully you started and sat some of these people that we recommended, and it worked out for you.
So the crazy thing, Brian, is that 81% of people in ESPN fantasy leagues started the Patriots defense, who had them rostered. So there were 19% of people out there who had them on their bench. That's too bad because I'll be honest, they might have lost. They were staring at 44 points on their bench. That's crazy.
Those people clearly need to be listening to this podcast.
Oh, yeah. All right, Brian, let's go into our, not so good picks.
You blew it!
Thank you, Billy Madison, for that one right there. All right, well, right from the start, my solid gold pick of the week, though he didn't have a terrible week, BroMob, I'm going ahead and I'm throwing in the towel. I'm saying, you know what? I called him having a great week. He didn't. Juju Smith-Schuster put up a pooper for you this week. He had 5 catches for 84 yards, accounting for 10.9 fantasy points. Again, it's not a terrible week for your wide receiver position, but it wasn't solid gold. Sorry about that, BroMob. And then finally, my stream of the week, Titans defense. It was nothing special. They ended up putting up 8 points for you this week. It's good for you in terms of just points, but I'll be honest, I had a really good week in terms of picks. So when you're looking at my bad picks and you're seeing 8 points from a defense, I'll go ahead and dust off my shoulders and say that's the one I'm gonna give away, BroMob. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Here's the deal, Chad. I actually did a little statistical breakdown of our picks this week, and you were correct on 69% of your picks this week. I was correct on 38%. So,
bingo bongo.
So, BroMob, I'm going to spend a little time here. So, here's the deal. Brian's rock solid, gold plated, diamond crested stream of the week turned out to be more like a blinged out, bedazzled turd. Derek Carr, 23 completions on 38 attempts. 198 yards passing, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, 9.7 points. The target on a streaming quarterback minimum is 15 points. You're looking for kind of like 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's kind of the the idea, the target, not what I expected from Derek Carr, nor what really a lot of people expected from Derek Carr this week. So that was disappointing. Another area where I had a really rough week was streaming recommendation of TJ Hawkinson, tight end of the Detroit Lions. 1 catch for 7 yards.
Thank you, Matthew Stafford, and thank you, Matt Patricia, for not game scripting them. It was just wonderful.
Yes. My bad, BroMob. I also recommended that you sit Larry Fitzgerald, who had 5 catches for 104 yards and almost 13 fantasy points. My bad. And finally, to drive the dagger through my heart, I said sit Kyler Murray. He went 25 for 40, 349, 16.4 fantasy points. He would have been a great streamer. And here's the deal. Look, I don't regret saying sit these guys against the Ravens. That defense is legit. Larry Fitz to Kyler, or rather Kyler Murray to Larry Fitz looks like it's going to be a connection that works all year long. And I think after 2 weeks I might be falling in love with it. So that could be more to come. But anyway, rough week for me. My bad, BroMob. Our bad, BroMob, on some dumpy picks.
Yeah, my bad for allowing Brian to have any input whatsoever. So sorry about that, BroMob. I'll make sure to put the door on him a couple more times this week. All right, let's move into our last segment here, BroMob, and talk about some waiver ads. All right, waivers for this week. BroMob, I mentioned him last week. He was a sneaky ad for you, and if you got him, great. Demarcus Robinson owned in 1% of ESPN leagues, so I'm guessing not many people believed in it. But if you did, congratulations, because you got yourself a star for the week 2. You know what I'm a little scared of, actually, is the fact that the team might choose who they're going to use every week, right? Because Mecole Hardman looked really good. Sammy Watkins was pretty much a non-factor in this game. It's just all dependent on who's getting covered in the defense, I think. So Patrick Mahomes is going to be looking all over the field. Doesn't miss a step without Tyreek Hill. So DeMarcus Robinson, really good. He showed flashes at the end of last season, and I think he's going to be a really good pickup for you this week. And he could be the number 1 waiver ad in fantasy. So get ready to spend a little bit of fab on him.
Yeah, absolutely. Another option out there on the waivers this week is going to be Raheem Mostert, running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Look, owned in only 10.6% of ESPN leagues. He is going to be a guy you want to have rostered, especially with all these injuries we've been seeing, soft tissue injuries. He and Matt Beretta are going to eat. So I would definitely try to get him on your rosters as soon as you can.
Yeah, that tasty Kyle Shanahan plate of dinner is looking good. I mean, that offense is so friendly to those running backs. So Raheem Mostert, just huge week and should continue to do that. Moving forward, DJ Charkh, again, it looked like he's the favorite target of Mr. Detective Minshew, solving crime together, one game at a time. So 21.5% of ESPN leagues added him last week, or added him, and they were happy about it. DJ Charkh should continue to eat, should continue to get those passes, and I definitely think you should be going out there. Listen, if your league's focusing on DeMarcus Robinson, you might be able to get a little bit lower of a fab bid on DJ Charkh. He's less of a name. He's kind of one of those weird sounding names, so people are like, who? You know, if not too invested in the league and stuff. So you might be able to get him for an easy 5 or 6 fab. But I would definitely be willing to spend about 10 to 15 on him. I think he's gonna have a great season.
Yeah, look, another guy that's out there, Chad, running back, is going to be Frank Gore, running back of the Buffalo Bills. Only owned, never aging. He's 975 years old. Only owned in 16.4% of ESPN leagues. So look, Gore, obviously Devin Singletary, the rookie, injured. So Gore's the guy, and he's going to get it. I think they're just going to ride him. He was a bell cow this week. I think he'll be a bell cow every week. He's on an offense that really caters to the run, so that's a bonus as well. You definitely want to pick up Frank Gore.
Yep, and then BroMob, we've already talked about it here. You need to get Jalen Samuels on your team if he's not on your team already, especially if you own James Conner. He's only owned in 26% of ESPN leagues. You got to go out there and get him. If James Conner ends up missing any time because of this knee, or if he gets injured mid-game next week, Jalen Samuel is a big pickup for you, and he could be a pretty sneaky flex stream going forward, depending on the matchups. If you're looking at a team like the Falcons, who are really bad against the pass in terms of running backs catching passes out of the backfield, Jalen Samuels could be getting used pretty heavily in that passing game, so it'd be nice to have. Brian, hit him with the last waiver ad here.
Yeah, the last one, which is going to be harder to find, so it's unlikely he's available. However, he is only rostered in 70.1% of ESPN leagues,
Insanity.
and that is, it blew my mind. That is tight end Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. Look, this guy is number 1 in target share through the first 2 weeks for tight ends. I mean, he's lighting it up, and he's a guy. Back-to-back games of 8 catches, touchdown. You want him on your roster. This guy could be the next coming of Gronkowski. I mean, he just looks great. He reminds me a little bit of Tony Gonzalez. Like he's a well-rounded tight end, seems to find the end zone. I think he's going to be a superstar. So look, if you're in one of those leagues where he's still available, which is 30% of leagues, he needs to be rostered in all leagues, all formats. Get him on your team.
Couple things of note here. So he reminds me of a little bit closer time period here of George Kittle from last season. Went in the 11th to 13th round in drafts last season, and he's getting used quite a bit like Kittle was as well, but he's putting up the yardage, right? So like Kittle was catching balls, and he was number 1 in the league at tight end for yards per reception, right? So that's Mark Andrews this season. He's doing that right now. And the fact that he's not owned in 30% of leagues is ridiculous. Brian, I'd be willing, because it's the tight end position, it's just so crucial. I'll be honest, I'd be willing to put up more than 25 fab on Mark Andrews if he's out there right now to get him. I mean, with how much there's been, it's been rocky, to say the least, at the tight end position this season. Mark Andrews presents some stability and some possible league-winning type of production. So I'd be willing to spend 25 fab on this guy.
Yeah, you seem to spend a little bit more fab than I would. I think the most. I get it.
How much is a championship worth to you? Right. I
get
the tight end position. George Kittle last season won a lot of people their championships, and Mark Andrews could be that guy for you.
I understand. So, I mean, I would be willing to go as high as maybe 17 or 18, and that's about as high as I'd go. I think, and that's spending a lot. I mean, you got to realize if you spent some fab last week, let's say you spent 10 last week, you got $90 of fab left, you drop 25 or more, I mean, you're talking about 65 fab dollars left over for the whole season. You got 11 more regular season weeks, and then plus playoffs if you make it, which I expect to make it. So
I'm happy that you did that math, Brian. Good job. I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you.
It took you a second, but you got it.
My brain hurts now, so we can go on to the next one.
All right, BroMob, let's move into our hold'ems. Listen, TJ Hawkinson, he put up a dud for you, but you know what? The guy's a rig, and the team's going to be scripting him into the game a lot more than what we saw last week. Expect greener pastures going forward. Do not drop him to the waivers. Again, it's the tight end position. It's pivotal. Jesus. Pivotal. Said it again. Pivotal. It's a pivotal position. It helps you win your leagues. Keep this guy on your roster because he's definitely going to do better for you.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Another guy like that is Will Fuller. I mean, Chad, you've got him in League of Record. He's had a rough start to the season, but look, this guy is dynamic. He can break one deep at any point, and I think he's just been off to a really rough start to start the season. So be patient. It's only 2 weeks. You don't need to be panicking on any of these guys we're talking about right now. So if you have Will Fuller, you hang on to him. You're not dropping him to the waivers unless you're in like a 8-team league or something like that, and there's just no room. You have a short bench or something like that. But other than that, you're keeping this guy in your squad. Yeah,
definitely. And then, so here's some bigger name fantasy players that you're going to hear, BroMob, but you don't need to be panicking on them yet, because they still, they're still great. So number 1 here, Mike Evans. Don't be trading him, because right now his trade value is just so incredibly low that you're not going to get what he's really worth in return. So listen, trade for this guy. Be the one that goes out and gets him. Listen, last week he had 8 targets in week 2, and he's got 13 total targets on the season. He's getting used. Bruce Arians loves to use his wideouts. Chris Godwin is the guy who's kind of benefiting from everything right now, but Mike Evans is a talent. He hasn't had a season under 1,000 receiving yards at all, so I don't expect that to change. Keep him on your team, or if you don't have him, go out there and get him for cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy at this to shift to the running back position, Joe Mixon has had a really rough start to the season. And look, they've started the season against two tough run Ds, I think. And I think the 49ers are a sneaky good run D,
They
Chad.
look good.
They
do look good all around.
I've been surprised. I watched a little tape on them yesterday, and after the game, I just kind of watched some of the highlights, and then I watched a little tape from last week. They're pretty solid against the run. So, Joe Mixon's offensive line is terrible. But look, you can't trade him right now.
No.
You basically, nobody's going to trade for him. They're going to make you drop him to the waivers. You don't want to drop him to the waivers. He's too talented. So you have to hold him and hope for better days ahead. You start getting, you string together a couple good weeks. Maybe then you try to tie him together with another player and trade and move on if that's what you want to do. But you don't want to mess with him right now. Keep him.
Yeah, another player you need to be keeping, BroMob. David Johnson. Listen, we already talked about it. He went up against the Ravens. This defense is as good, if not better, Brian, in my eyes, than the Bears defense. When it comes to the rushing attack, it's a very good defense. Always has been good. But David Johnson, they got decimated at the line pretty much all game. I expect more games like week 1 where he gets used heavily in the passing game, heavily in the rushing game, and he's the focal point next to Kyler Murray in that offense. Keep him on your team. Don't trade him away because, again, it's another player that people are going to be like, that offensive line looks like trash and they look bad. David Johnson's a star talent. You need to keep him on your team.
Yeah, and you just got to realize, too, they threw the ball 40 times, and a big part of that is because David Johnson came out of the game with an injury for a bit. I mean, he missed some significant time in that game. So, it was a rough outing for him. He at least put some points up for you, but you're not moving him, and you don't want to trade him right now because his value is super low either. So, David Johnson's too talented. He's too much of a talent on that squad to not be involved. They're going to find a way to get him involved. And these first 2 weeks have been rough. I think the offense has been really trying to figure itself out. So you got to be patient with this guy right now. Just hang on to him, keep playing him. You'll be happy you did.
All right, BroMob. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday and Wednesday to stay up to date on the fantasy football world and to gather any insights on how to dominate your fantasy football league.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you get over to the fantasyfootballbros.com for our starts and sits of the week. Every Wednesday night we get those up, and they're also on Key to the Title for a little bit more of an in-depth look. So keytothetitle.com, and you can create an account for free. It's no cost.
If you're not on Apple Podcasts, we're also on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcast, Stitcher, anywhere you can possibly think of, we're there. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FFBrosPodcast, and be sure to check our website, thefantasyfootballbros.com, for all kinds of articles, rankings, and so much more. See you tomorrow, BroMob. Brian, how you like that L?
Don't like it. Bye, everybody.